2023. We're picking winners for the Cheezeman. How'd you do last week? Did you win? Did you survive? Getting near the end of the year, so if you're still around, you got a chance at winning some prizes, I take it. Did you survive? Our pick last week would have been Buffalo in the primary pool. I also used Buffalo in my other pool. I have one left that I'm still in. That one ends at the end of the regular season, so I've got to get through 2 more weeks to split it with whomever is left here. See, my picks in the main pool. Obviously, I got beat earlier this year. Not a good year for me in the big pool here, but I'm just playing it through to show you who I would pick each week based upon the teams that I had used and selected. So Buffalo would have won for us, and we would have advanced again. So that's pretty cool. Here's our top 5 plays for week 16. Now, one thing, we went 2 and 3 last week. So for the year, 42 and 36 and 2. But the one thing I would tell you is, I do these, last week I did the video really early, so I didn't see any of the rushing or receiving overs or passing overs, which really kind of stinks because once I saw them, for example, Trey McBride's and Chuba Hubbard's numbers, they were high. So on Sunday, when it actually came to make the plays, I was off of them a bit. My bigger plays, I would have moved Chris Rodriguez and Stephon Diggs over. I still love Diggs. But so I would have went 3 and 2 at least. But my best play last week was Mike Evans. I mean, once you saw his receiving total against a Jacksonville pass defense, it's just terrible. It was 67 yards. I'm like, oh my God, that's the play of the week. So sometimes, when I show you this stuff, I'm showing you the players that I'm looking at that I will probably do something on. But then when you see the numbers, you're going to make adjustments, right? So unfortunately. Now, the reason I review, though, is I'm not afraid to show you all my losses. I mean, a lot of people go out there, they put videos together, or they say a lot of bold predictions and these kind of things, and then they never review when they get their butts whooped, right? I ain't afraid of that. Look, this is hard to do. I've been doing it for a long time. I know. So, I'm not afraid or ashamed to say, here's my numbers. But I know a lot of people out there will put their stuff out and then never look back. But that's what we're going to do because hopefully it's helping you learn and choose. All I try to do, honestly, is give you enough facts and information, and then I throw out the names that I'm recommending based upon those facts and information, and then you got to choose what you want to do, right? All right, here you can see the other ones. Like I said, Mike Evans ended up being my biggest play of the week, and that just looked too easy. I took Baker Mayfield over, too, because, Tampa Bay is playing well. They were at home against this bad defense, this bad pass defense, and it worked out. So, anyways, in that game, though, I chose for Jacksonville, Parker Washington, which ended up being a horrible pick. I should have just went with, Ridley, but it was interesting to note. Ridley had, no catches the whole first half. And then in the second half, he got busy there. All right, guys, the primary pool, you can see 1,791 entries. We're down to 4 people left. There were 6 left. 2 went out by choosing Denver, a team that I thought would romp. Denver stinks weird. Green Bay and Philly were the 4 teams that advanced. And I got to tell you, I warned people last week that the Carolina Panthers were going to give Green Bay a pretty good game, and they did, so they had to sweat that one out, right? Even Philly ended up being a sweat out a bit. Buffalo, he had to sweat that out, right? We needed a end of game drive by Josh Allen to get that field goal to get the final win. Nothing's ever easy, especially at this time of year when you have a limited number of choices to select from for Survivor. All right, our metrics. Survivor metrics, you can see here, lots of blue in the favorites, home favorites, away favorites, all doing better than normal. Thursday night favorites now 12 and 4, 75%. Better than normal. Against the spread, you can see home teams and favorites are still doing really well, even though it was a struggle last week for home teams and favorites. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Over under, the over wins for the 3rd time in 4 weeks. And I'm going to show you some stuff. We talk about this all the time. Literally in hundreds of games, thousands of games, the OU ends up right about 50-50. And so my gut, I told you a few weeks back, was this thing's going to get closer to 50-50, so I think we're in an over area now. Down below there, in our upsets, take a look. Last week, 6-point favorites, straight up went 2 and 3. Just awful. Down to 57 and 20 now. 0 and 5 against the spread, so they're still beating their norm against the spread this year, but that 0 and 5 brought it all the way back to about its normal average. You can see there we have 20 current upsets of 6 and more. Normal season we'll have 22. So with 2 weeks to go, we're pretty much right on pace. And you can see there, 1.25 per week in 2023. And a normal year, we average 1.23 per week. So we got 2 left to go. And you can see last year now, passes up this year in terms of a percentage of wins for 6-point favorites. All right, this week's schedule, week 17. You can see here, weird week. We're playing a lot of games on New Year's Eve, 14 of them. We only have 2 home dogs this week. We have 7 favorites of 6 points and higher. So we're bound to get 2 of our upsets this week, I think. Who knows who they'll be? We'll figure that out, or try to figure it out. A lot of games of 6-point favorites and higher. Real quick, I want to show you this. Here's our home and away favorites. This is against the spread. And the main column out you look at are those giving those favorites giving 3.5 to 5.5 points. You can see both home favorites and away favorites are doing much better than normal against the spread. And the reason I bring it up is because 2 of my key survivor plays this week, our team's given 4.5 points, which fit right in these buckets. Here's something I want to show you, and I should have done this last week, and I failed you guys. I'm sorry for this. Christmas Day games. I didn't even realize this, but check it out. We've had 18 Christmas Day games in the past like 20 years, okay? 17, 18, 20 years. Look at that. Favorites straight up 9-9. Home teams straight up 9-9. Against the spread, favorites 4-11. Home teams 5-10. Just awful. I mean, when you consider favorites normally win 67% of the time. Home teams win 55, 56% of the time. And you can see there, 14 of the 18 games had home favorites. And straight up, they're going 9-9. Normally, we have 64% home favorites, right? So the point here is that there's a theory, and I believe in it, that when you're at home during a holiday, you tend to be distracted by all of the family stuff, if you will, right? I mean, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, you're with your family, you're having dinners, you're having gift exchanges, all this kind of stuff. But when you're on the road, what do? You go hang out at the hotel with your teammates, right? Family is back home. It's just the way it is. So you buckle up and go, ah, we got a game. Let's go to work, man. As long as we have to do it, it stinks, but let's go do it and get it done. 14 of 18 home favorites, yet they're only 9-9 straight up. So I went and checked out for New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. I did them both so you can compare them, but we only have New Year's Eve games this year. We have 14 New Year's Eve games, and 12 have home favorites. Once again, we have a huge amount of home favorites. But you can see here, New Year's Eve normally, 31 games we've had, 24 home favorites. Again, 77% were home favorites, and we got 12 out of 14 this week. But take a look there. The favorites straight up, they do better than Christmas Day, 2011, 65%. Favorites against spread are over 50%. That's pretty good. Home teams winning at about 55%. Home against the spread, 42% only. The OU right at about 50%. On New Year's Day, just to give you a comparison, you see New Year's Day teams favorites do a lot better than straight up than they do on New Year's Eve. 35-11, that's a remarkable record. And the home teams also straight up 28-18, 61%. Home teams against the spread 25-20, that's phenomenal. Favorites against spread about normal. OU again, once again, right around 50%. So I bring this up because these numbers aren't so bad. The Christmas Day numbers were pretty bad for favorites and home teams. Top 5 offense and defense yards per game. You see, Miami's really coming back now at 411. San Francisco's right near them. Despite getting bombed by Baltimore, San Francisco put up a ton of yards. So you can see in the top 5 defenses, Baltimore falls out, right? They were number 2. They're out now. Cleveland's still number 1 by a mile. Kansas City up there. Jets and Carolina still up there. Number 1 pass defense, Cleveland. Number 1 rush defense, Chicago. All right, let's check out our in-play options for Week 17. We got 6 of them. Actually, there's 7 because the Rams right now qualify for the playoffs as we speak, so they should be in here too. But real quick, I'm going Philly 1, Buffalo 2, San Francisco 3, Cleveland 4, Jacksonville 5, Kansas City 6, Rams 7. You could see here on our non-playoff team options, I would put Houston 7, Rams 8, Chicago 9. On our maybes, Dallas 10, Tampa 11, Seattle 12. And, Dallas 6-point favorite at home. They've been awesome at home. But Detroit is a good football team. That's why it scares me a little bit. Tampa Bay is playing really well right now, especially at home. So I kind of feel more comfortable with them. Risky games, I put, Indiana, Las Vegas, the Baltimore-Miami game. I mean, Baltimore looked fantastic beating San Francisco. A lot of things happened just right for them. But you come off a huge win, and you're going back home against a pretty good team. Chance for a letdown there. Chargers, Denver. I mean, Denver's not starting Russell Wilson. They're starting Jarrett Stidham. So I don't know. Green Bay, Minnesota, I don't know. First of all, Philadelphia, you can see here they're 11-4, battling for a playoff spot. They still could get the number 1 seed overall. Arizona's eliminated. They can still get the number 1 draft pick overall. But we have Arizona's number 9 rush offense against Philly's number 8 rush defense. That's Arizona's strength, is that rushing offense. It'll be interesting to see if Philadelphia shuts that down, how things go here. On the other side of the ball, Philadelphia has a top flight offense going against Arizona's number 27 defense. You can see here at home, Philly's 6-1, averaging 31 a game. Check this out. Their lowest scoring total at home is 48 points. That happened against, I believe, the Jets. But you can see here, their other totals of their home games, 51, 61, 62, 65, 71, 58. Philly's 8-7 to the over. Arizona 9-6. The current over is 48.5. I like the over. I mean, 48's as low as they've gone. The bottom line is, if Arizona can just score some points, and Philly's defense has shown they can't really stop anyone completely. So with Kyler Murray and McBride and then James Conner, I think Arizona's going to score some points, at least get in the teens. So I like this game to go over. I love Philadelphia getting their team total over 30. The only way I don't like it is if Philly actually shuts them down. If they do shut them down, then Philly, what their typical mode is run and grind you out the second half and win 26-10, right? And then everything goes under. But I feel like Arizona's going to score. Jalen Hurts has 15 rushing touchdowns this year. I mean, you got to keep just playing his anytime TD. He keeps getting them. I like Trey McBride. Now, his OU this week is only 61.5. I think it was a little bit higher last week. But, of course, Philly's deep pass defense is not very good. And Arizona right now, has a bunch of backups going. I don't know if Marquise Brown will be back or not. But McBride seems to be the favored receiver. I figure Philly gets up. Arizona's chucking it. McBride could have a big game this week after that rough one last week. Buffalo, number 2. They won 3 straight right now. So, and if they win here, they pretty much clinch a playoff berth, regardless of what happens the last weekend of the season. If they lose, they still have a pretty good shot of making it, but it messes things up a lot. So, New England has only scored 20 points 4 times this year, but one of those times was when they beat Buffalo 29-25 at home earlier this season. That's our high total for the year, by the way. Buffalo had 2 turnovers that game. New England actually outgained the Bills. That's bizarre. So, the way I look at it, though, Buffalo's coming in. Last week, we said that could be that game they overlook a team, right? They did that a few years back, went to Jacksonville and lost 9-6. This year, they go to the Chargers, rookie quarterback, floundering team, and they almost blow it, right? Now they're coming home, though. They pretty much will clinch a playoff berth if they win. It's a Belichick team. It's a rivalry game. It's a team that beat them earlier in the season. I think Buffalo gears up for this, continues. They want to have a 5-game winning streak going to the playoffs and make a serious run, feel good about themselves. So prior to that game where New England beat them, Buffalo had won 4 straight against Patriots, winning by 12 points or more. New England is 3-4 in away games. That's pretty good. But the best plays here, I like, New England's 6-9 to the under, Buffalo 5-10. I kind of like the game going under 40.5, even though the Patriots have scored a little bit lately. And I would use Buffalo in teasers. So in other words, I'm not sure Buffalo could win by 12, but I'd tease it down to under 7 points and then use them in your teaser parlays, all right? All right, San Francisco, Washington. I mean, the Niners finally lose with Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel. Look, I'm going to say, you can't beat every good team every game in a season. It doesn't happen. It rarely happens, okay? And so San Francisco not only had beaten everybody, they pretty much destroyed everybody, so they lose one game. And by the way, if you really go back and watch, how many tip balls fell into Baltimore guys' hands? I think it happened 3 times. So that's kind of a fluky thing too. I'm not worried one bit about San Francisco. In fact, if you're San Francisco, you're better off losing one of these than going into the playoffs off a streak like that, where you've beaten every single good team. So it doesn't bother me at all. I think San Francisco comes back. Now you're playing the number 32 defense. This is going to be a big game for their offense to go crazy. I think they will. Washington's going to start Jacoby Brissett. San Francisco, number 2 offense against Washington, number 32 defense. Washington's lost 6 straight. They do have a habit of scoring late. McCaffrey's in the MVP race. Normally, I would say let's pick a receiver and focus on their yards or catches in this type of game. But I think McCaffrey being right there, you might look at his rushing over or his rushing and receiving over or anytime touchdown. I think San Francisco is going to make a focus or an emphasis on helping him get to 2,000 yards and win an MVP. I really do. We haven't had a running back win it in a long time. Chris Rodriguez, we've hit a couple weeks in a row now. I'm telling you, he's Washington's main running back. He did it again last week. Now, here's the only issue, right? We've hit him perfectly. His OUs have been like 20s and 30s. Last week, he had like 58 yards, I think. So we're going to see that number come up. So where does that number go? If it's still in the 30s, I'm all over it. If it's up in the 50s against San Francisco's defense, I got to think again there maybe. But let's look at the Jets at Cleveland, number 4. Cleveland wins if they clinch playoff berth. You know, I've been telling you Cleveland's a pretty good football team all year. Love their defense and said from the beginning I think they were a potential playoff team. And now look at them. Without the number 1 running back, Nick Chubb, without the number 1 quarterback, Deshaun Watson, and they're right there for a playoff berth. You know, the Jets won last week, but they did not look very good doing it, giving up all those points in the fourth quarter. However, you know, they still look pretty good putting up those 27 points early on. They put up 380 yards for the game. The one thing I want you to remember, though, is that's a number 32 defense, and now you're going against the number 1 defense. Cleveland at home only gives up 15 points a game. They're much better at home than on the road. It's a very low total of only 34.5. Cleveland is 9-6 to the overs. I think Cleveland will have success running the ball in this game, and at home do a pretty good job. This game could get the over. I'm probably not touching anything in this game, but I do like Cleveland. I think Cleveland will roll this game. Carolina at Jacksonville. I don't have Jacksonville higher. Maybe I should. Just because Carolina's played pretty well lately, and the number's up at, what, 6 or 7 now. Jacksonville is 8-3. They've lost 4 straight, so they're 8-7 now. And now Jacksonville's got to win to make the playoffs. If they lose this week, they ain't making the playoffs. So they're going to be playing at home. They should be sharp as ever. They should get after this one. Carolina struggles against the run, very good against the pass. I like ATN here to have a big day. He hasn't had one in a while. On the other side, you got Jacksonville's number 29 pass defense. They give a lot of points to quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends. So the OU is only 37.5 here. I like the over here for sure. Carolina's been scoring points lately. Jacksonville's defense doesn't scare you. I think Jacksonville easily gets in the 20s here. So 37.5 is low enough. I think that's a good play. The other play to look at is Tommy Tremble. Jacksonville does poorly against tight ends. Last week, Tommy Tremble had like 56, 58, 59 yards receiving. My guess is his receiving total should still be down in the 30s maybe. So in that case, I like it here. Jacksonville gets ahead. Carolina's throwing the ball against that defense. Tommy Tremble, he's a sneaky play this week. I like him. Cincinnati at Kansas City. Now, this is kind of a tale of 2 games potentially because if Jamar Chase plays, and it looks like he may, even though he may be a bit banged up, that changes everything. It just changes everything for Cincinnati on offense. Browning still went over his pass yards last week. If Chase plays, I love him to go over his pass yards this week, even though Kansas City has a number 3 pass defense. If Chase plays, I think this game goes over. It's 44.5 total, and I'm all over that. The other one to look at here is Cincinnati is one of the worst teams. We've been playing this all year long. They're the 31st ranked team against tight ends, giving up points. Love Travis Kelce's overs this week. We'll see what they are, but chances are it's a top 5 play this week. This is a huge game. Kansas City doesn't necessarily need to win it. They want to because they've lost 3 of 4 and need to get right badly after that debacle against Las Vegas. But they don't have to win it because the Chargers, Vegas, and Denver are kind of so far behind them, and they play the Chargers next week and should beat them. But Cincinnati has to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. And one thing to note, we talked about this before, Cincinnati's 0-5 to AFC North teams this year, and last year they had a poor record against the AFC North. Against everybody else, Cincinnati has a great record. They're 8-2. So they're not afraid of these teams or these games. I think if Chase plays, I like Browning's over passing yards. I like the game over. I like Kelce's over. That's where we're going here. Tennessee at Houston. Houston just beat Tennessee 19-16 a few weeks ago. Derrick Henry had 500-yard games against them in a row, 4 of them over 200 yards, and Houston held him to like 10 yards rushing. So DeMeco Ryans either has his number or Tennessee's just completely given up on Derrick Henry, which is a shame. But I like Houston to blow Tennessee out this game. Tennessee has stunk on the road, 1-6, averaging 15 points a game. The only time they did any good was that weird Miami game where Levis brought them back with 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Houston's not going to let that happen. Houston has to win to make the playoffs. C.J. Stroud should be back. I like this game to be a blowout. I'm taking Houston minus the 4.5. That's one of those ones in that zone we talked about earlier. Rams at Giants is another one in the 4.5 zone. Love the Rams here. Look, the Giants looked better than they should have last week, and I know they've won 2 straight at home. Those games were to New England and Green Bay, but this Rams offense is the second best offense in football the last 5 weeks. It has not been good. It's been great. It's been dominant since they got Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams back with Puka, Higbee. They've been on fire. 32 points a game. Kyren Williams has been over 100 yards in 4 of the last 5 games. The only one he missed was against the number 1 defense in football, Cleveland. Remember we talked about this a couple weeks ago? Washington had not given up a 100-yard rusher until they met Kyren Williams. New Orleans had not given up a 100-yard rusher until they met Kyren Williams. The Giants have given up a couple 100-yard rushers. I think Kyren Williams is going to do it again. So if you decide to focus on Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp and Puka gives you a double-edged sword. Stafford's throwing it well. They'll annihilate you. So I love the Rams to get out and win this one in a big way. And they're one of my best plays at minus 4.5. I would take a look at the Kyren Williams rushing over as well. Atlanta at Chicago. I mean, Chicago's won 4 of 6, and they could have won the other 2. Close losses to Detroit and Cleveland, 2 playoff teams. And now Atlanta comes in. Here's the difference. Last week, I kind of liked Indianapolis, right? But Indianapolis rush defense is 25th or 26th in the league, and Atlanta had fun. They had a great game. Chicago's rush defense is number 1 in football right now, and Atlanta is a running team. So you take a look at some of this right here. Chicago's number 1 rush defense against Atlanta's number 8 rush offense. Chicago's not given up a 100-yard rusher all season. And then you got Chicago's number 2 rush offense against Atlanta's 15 rush defense. Atlanta's 2-4 away, including a loss to Carolina, 9-7. Both teams still actually have a outside shot at the playoff spot. Look, people are talking about Atlanta for the playoffs. They're only 1 game ahead of Chicago. And they've played like crud in the last 5 weeks compared to Chicago. So I like the Bears. Bears at home, minus 3. I think they're going to beat them here. I might look at Bijan Robinson's under in his rushing yards. He has a good rushing game last week. Now his number is going to spike up, and the Bears have a pretty good run defense. I think they will stop him. We'll see. Chicago's terrible against tight ends, so you might look at Jonnu Smith or Kyle Pitts. I'm kind of leaning towards Jonnu Smith because his are usually lower. Maybe take us over there. Detroit at Dallas. Dallas has lost 2 straight games, but both those are on the road. This is back at home where, take a look, Dallas 7-0 at home by an average score of basically 40-15. That is insanity, man. That is so good. Detroit is 5-2 away, but they only average 22 points away versus 30 at home. Goff is much better at home than away. The only good news for him here, just like we talked about Minnesota, he played in a dome stadium. He played pretty well. Dallas, you got a nice warm weather stadium. I think he'll do pretty well there. Both these are top 5 offenses. You can see the defenses are pretty good. Dallas is a very strong top 10. So Dallas's lowest total at home is 30 points against the Jets. That's their lowest team total at home. So I like the Dallas team total over 30.5. I think it continues here. Detroit may shut them down a bit, but Dallas is still going to score some points here. You know, I'd look at the over. It's 53.5. Scares you a notch. But both these teams should score pretty well. All right, let's get into who we're looking at in Play and Survivor this week. We're going to go with the Houston Texans in the primary pool. My other option will be Chicago, and I wouldn't be afraid. I don't think Atlanta's as good as people think. I think the Bears are playing as well as they have, man. They give you no reason to think they can't beat Atlanta, honestly. And I'm a Bears fan, but I'm not like that avid Bears fan who's not objective about them. I think you guys have seen that. Here's some other things I'm looking at now for our top 5 plays. Right now, I'm looking at the Philly team total over 30.5. I think Arizona scores enough where Hurts and gang will want to get this, not a perfect game, but certainly show they're on the right track towards the playoffs. They're going to score in the 30s. I also like on the bonus side, them getting over 33.5 at plus 150 money. And like we showed you, Philly game totals in Philly have not been under 48, which means Philly's going to score some freaking points. Travis Kelce over receiving yards, talked about this against Cincinnati. Cincinnati, second worst in the league against tight ends. Same for Tommy Tremble. Take his over receiving yards against Jacksonville. Houston and the Rams minus 4.5. Love both of those. On the bonus side, San Francisco team total over. And if Jamar Chase plays, now Cincinnati plus 7 I would take, but the Cincinnati-Kansas City game over 44.5, if Chase plays, that's easily one of my top 5 plays. Okay? Jake Browning passover, if Chase plays, all over that one too. And then Chris Rodriguez, as long as his rushing total stays, 30s definitely. 40s probably. He starts getting over 45, got to watch it. Just because San Francisco does have a really strong defense. A few others I'm watching now, and I'm throwing these out there. Don't know the numbers yet, so these could all change. But based on trends, you got to think Travis Etienne over rushing, Trevor Lawrence under passing. Jacksonville, Carolina over 37 we talked about. Chris Godwin over his receptions against New Orleans. Now, New Orleans has had Mike Evans' number. He rarely plays well against New Orleans. So that means Godwin and Rachaad White become your answers. Godwin catches a lot of balls, so I like him to get his reception total over. I would look at Rachaad White rushing plus receiving over and go that direction if it's reasonable. He's been on fire the last month. Tampa Bay -3, I like it. Chris Olave over receiving yards against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's given up the most 100-yard receivers this year. So we always look at who that guy is going to be. I like Olave. Kyron Williams over his rushing yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown over his receptions against Dallas. Look, Dallas is going to score some points, which means Detroit's behind. St. Brown's going to catch a bunch of balls. Last week he had double digits again, so look at that. We talked about Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts over receiving yards for Chicago. Take a look at those. Bijan under his rushing yards against Chicago. And then Christian McCaffrey. When his numbers come out, guys, take a look. You either want to take his rushing over or his rushing plus receiving yards over, or an anytime touchdown. And why I say this is because Shanahan loves him, and I think San Francisco is going to push to try to get him that MVP this year. He could get close to 2,000 yards rushing. He's just been insane good, and he's got all the numbers. We haven't had a running back get MVP in a long time. McCaffrey right now has the numbers to do it. This could be the game where they just feed him and he gets 200 yards of offense. It's in the primary pool. I'm going with Houston. I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to my other survivor pool because just in case the people that are left watching, I don't want them to know. And I don't want to jinx it. But I do have other options in that pool. Maybe playing Houston, maybe playing one of those. All right. Hey, thanks to CoopGroove.com for sponsoring us. Check out the drumsticks, baseball bats, golf grips. Please like us and subscribe to our channel. This has been NFL Survivor Week 17. Big winners of the Cheezeman. Good luck. We hope you survive.